Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started, everyone. My name is Tariq Tachil, and I'm the director of CASI, the Center for the Advanced Study of India, and a professor in the Political Science Department here at Penn. I'm delighted to be able to welcome you to today's Saluja Global Fellow Special event with Shubha Mudgal alongside Aneesh Pradhan. Please join me in welcoming Shubha and Aneesh ji to the stage, and then I'll continue with the introduction, but please join me in giving them a hand. This is for you just before you sit down. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me begin by thanking Vishal Saluja, who is with us today, for his extraordinary generosity in enabling the Saluja Global Fellows Program, without which this event wouldn't be possible. I also want to thank our wonderful colleagues at CASI. The team that I have here has been phenomenal, and we couldn't have done any of this without them. Juliana, Georgette, Alan, Rachel, Matt, Shahana, Kiran, Jitender, and Nikhil. And I want to give a special shout out to Juni Bahugna, without whom she was the inspiration behind this event, and she's the reason that Shubha ji is here. So thank you guys for everything that you've done to make this possible and to make possible their time on campus. I'm going to keep my welcome very brief because I know the voice that you all came here to hear was not mine. But I do want to mention that across 33 years, CASI has primarily served as a social science center. But we've increasingly sought to try and showcase voices from the fine arts in India, including the filmmaker Meera Nair, who we hosted with the same program last year. Today marks another first for our center, our first musical performance, for which it's my pleasure that we have our distinguished guests here on campus. They've already been generously meeting with students, faculty, and staff, including an informal and lively lunch discussion with our students from across 4 schools yesterday. They've served as guest speakers in Professor Jim Sykes' Introduction to World Music class. And they had a musical collaboration at CASI, definitely a CASI first, with our very own Penn world-famous a cappella group, Penn Masala, who, by the way, have their own showcase this Saturday. So it's a good week for Indian music here at Penn. We really thank you both for engaging so generously with so many of us on campus and for already filling our halls with song. I just want to briefly introduce Shubha Mudgal ji, who has been someone who has been born into a musically dedicated family and been trained by some of India's finest musicians and musicologists. Her training includes the eminent scholar, musician, and composer, Pandit Ramshreya Jha, Ramrang. She also received guidance from Pandit Viraya Chandra and Pandit Vasant Thakur. She later learned stylistic techniques from well-known maestros, Pandit Jitendra Abhisheki and Pandit Kumar Gandharv. She also received training in thumri from Srimati Naina Devi. In addition to being a performer whose performances and vocal traditions span genres, she's won recognition as a composer. She's the recipient of numerous awards, including the Padma Shri from the Government of India in the year 2000, India's 4th highest civilian award, and the Gold Plaque for Special Achievement in Music at the 34th Chicago International Film Festival. She also won the Yash Bharati Samman from the Government of Uttar Pradesh, the state of her birth, in 2015. In addition to her intensive classical training, she's been very open to creating music in other genres, including popular hits that many of you may have heard of, including Dholna in 1999 and Ab Ke Sawan in 2006, as well as film music. And she's been an award-winning composer across several of these genres. She's also been a leading voice on a number of key questions and issues confronting music and performing arts in India and across the world, including the role of digital platforms, preserving artistic freedoms, and maintaining and expanding engagement with classical music among students and young people, both in India and across the world. And in fact, in an interview, she even warned of the need for broader societal acknowledgement of the importance of the arts, noting that in India, till we give the same importance to music and the arts that we do to maths and science, or attach a tangible outcome to its studies, children will never understand the value it adds to growth and development. And towards that end, she's been closely involved with several projects related to musical education, including for the Government of India during the National Curriculum Framework designing in 2005, and has taught at several institutions, including Goa University and Ashoka University. She is accompanied today by Anish Pradhan ji, who is one of India's leading tabla players, a disciple of the illustrious tabla maestro Nikhil Ghosh, from whom he inherited a rich and varied repertoire of traditional tabla solo compositions from various gharanas. He is also an award-winning composer and teacher himself, and the two of them together have established an online distribution platform for musicians specializing in diverse forms of Indian music. The website is _records.com, and they've also curated sangeetkosh.net, which is an online encyclopedia of Indian music. I encourage you all to check it out. They are accompanied today on the harmonium by Dr. Kedar Naphade, who has been a disciple of the late great Pandit Tulsidas Borkar, and on the Tanpura, our very own Penn student, Vaishnavi Tyagi, who is also a student of Shubhaji's. So before I turn it over, let me just tell you that today's event will combine lecture and musical performance. So Shubhaji and Aneesh will provide brief illustrations of the vocal forms known as khayal and thumri, two forms of music that Shubhaji has been immersed in for the past 4 decades. And they're going to also discuss both of these forms and the reasons behind their different statuses that they're often accorded within the pantheon of Hindustani musical forms. And then following this performance, Shubhaji and Aneesh will continue their performance via an exchange with Professor Davesh Soneji, who is our very own South Asian Studies department professor and an expert on the performing arts in India. And after that, we'll have some brief time for an audience Q&A. Following the performance, you're all invited to a reception for all of us and our guests upstairs in the Blank Forum. Before I leave, let me just remind you to please silence your phones. And no flash photography. We also prefer that you not record. We are recording the event and the recording will be made available, but we prefer that you not do recordings on your phone during the event. Use your eyes to watch them, not your screens. Please join me in welcoming Saluja Global Fellow, Shubha Mudgal ji, alongside Anish Pradhan ji and Kedar Naphade ji and Dept. Thank you so much.
Namaskar to all of you. Thank you for being here this evening. I'd like to start by expressing my gratitude to the Center for Advanced Study of India for bestowing this absolute honor on me, the Saluja Global Fellowship program, which I've been fortunate to be a part of. I'm really grateful for this opportunity and have spent my time at the center meeting some of the most distinguished scholars and academicians and students in this wonderful institution. I'd like to start with 2 compositions, 2 khayal compositions in the raag Bhim Palasi, which is one of the many rags that are sung at this time of the day. The first composition is set to a cycle of 7 units or matras called Rupak and was composed by my Guru Pandit Ram Ashray Jha, Ram Rang. The Madhile composition is the faster paced composition that follows, is set to a cycle of 16 matras or units called Trital and was composed by a very eminent vocalist and composer, Ustad Asmat Hussain Khan Dilrang. I'm very, very grateful to Kedar ji for sparing time from his very demanding schedule to accompany me, and thank you Vaishnavi also. Thank you Deepak ji for doing the sound. Ragdari music, khayal and thumri-dadra, which I've been studying for many decades, these are all forms that rely on the ability of the artists to improvise and elaborate spontaneously. The elaborations are based on seed ideas, musical ideas that are expressed, that are manifested in the melody of the rag, in the rhythmic cycle, in the text. So using all these frameworks we try and elaborate and improvise spontaneously. It's always a slippery slope, and I seek your good wishes that I might be able to do something interesting today. Thank you. Raag Bhim Palasi. Mangare Kaba I'd like to present a dadra, which has, this is a style that has a little flexibility and gives a little license to move out of the raag structure and lays more emphasis on the sahitya or the literature. It's in a raag called Maj Khamaj. See if you like it. डगर बुलाए हाँ डगर ओ डगर डगर बुलाए मैके में मैके में नित मैके में नित खेलत रही ससुर में ससुर में ससुर ससुर में जात लजा ससुर में हो जात लजा डगर बुलाने डगर बुलाने 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 डगर बुलाने हो डगर बुलाने हो डगर बुलाने डगर बुलाने डगर बुलाने मिलब हम कैसे डगर बुलाने मैके में नित हंसत खेलत रही ससुर में जात लजाने डगर बुलाने मिलब हम कैसे डगर बुलाने डगर बुलाने डगर बुलाने डगर बुलाने डगर Thank you so much. I think I've exceeded my time for the demonstration a little bit, so do forgive me. But I'm really looking forward to Devesh ji being in conversation with us. Thank you, Kedar ji. Thank you, Vaishnavi. Yeah, I'll keep it. Thank you. Please, One second, he'll just. ये वाला दे देंगे.
हाँ, sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shubhaji. I don't know what to say. I feel like this very mundane level thing that we're doing in the form of this conversation really cuts out a lot of the kind of sublime presence of music that we felt, and I feel a little strange cutting this down through this conversation. I feel like we could hear so much more of you, and I really wanted to thank you so much for that.
But I'm very grateful that you are sparing time to speak to us, and don't ask me too many difficult questions.
It's such a pleasure, and thank you once again. I think we need another round of applause before we begin. So, Shubhaji, I really wanted to begin talking to you by focusing a little bit on some general things, and then we'll get into some specifics, I think, as we move through the discussion. The first thing I wanted to talk to you a little bit about was basically your journeys as musicians. So, Shubhaji, I know you have really carved a very unique kind of musical ecology for your own artistic voice, right? So you've sung, the entire gamut of raga-based music, popular music. So khayal, thumri, pop music, music for films, folk music, devotional music. You've done all of this. And so I wanted to have you both actually speak a little bit about how you create work that really moves almost seamlessly. And for those of you who've heard Shubhaji's renditions of popular music, you'll really see how seamlessly it kind of flows in and out of this kind of raga-based music that you heard today. And so I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, about sort of traversing so many genres and so many styles, over the course of both of your artistic careers.
Well, my musical mother tongue, in a sense, is ragdari music. That is what I have been trained in, and in the two genres known as khayal and thumri. That is what I am most at ease with. And I continue studying these two forms. But I'm also very much a person, I'm an avid listener. And I was brought up by parents who really exposed me to a wide diversity of musical forms in India. And also gave me the opportunity to arrive at my own preferences. I'm not sure that my parents loved every piece of music that I played all the time in the house or hummed, but we sort of agreed to disagree. And I would hear some of the music that they played and which I didn't like, and I wouldn't make too much of a noise about it. But I think this openness to listening to various forms of music, and also a kind of deep passion and reverence for the study of music, which really I think I would not have been exposed to had it not been for my absolutely wonderful parents. And I was never asked to stop learning music or practicing music to prepare for examinations. I was never asked to, sort of think of a serious, decent career and not be a musician. In fact, it was my mother who gave me the option to take a year off and decide whether I want to do music and make a full-time commitment to it or not. And the next group of people I really need to thank and remember with gratitude always are my gurus. Each of them, though they were very, very eminent people in the sphere of Hindustani classical music, had a keen interest in literature, had a keen interest in different kinds of literature, not just their mother tongue, but Urdu poetry, Marathi poetry, Bangla poetry, and they would share this with me. Also, my gurus were what are known as Vaggayakars, those who write their own songs. So they were so proficient in literature that they also wrote their own songs. And they also had a keen interest in forms other than the classical. My guru, Ramashri Jhaji, Ramrangji, tells us the story of how he ran away from home to join a Ramlila party and play harmonium in that. And I think all my other gurus also had a keen interest in bhajan, Marathi theatre music, ghazal, tappa, Punjabi kafi, Sufi music. And that's why I think this exposure to diverse forms is something that I've inherited and have enjoyed greatly. And then I was, again, very fortunate to meet people who were from other forms, like popular music. Who on earth calls a woman, an overweight woman in a sari, to come sing pop songs? But there were these lovely composers who did. And we had great fun doing Up Ke Sawan and, Rangi Do Mharo Dholna and whatever. And there were some people, there were the orthodox who said, she has betrayed the cause of Hindustani classical music. And we just grinned back at them and went on and sang both classical music and thumri and dadra and popular music. So that's my journey.
Wonderful. Aneesh, same question to you, because you also have played and accompanied so many different artists in so many different genres across so many different countries. Your recording profile is actually mind-boggling when you think about it. And so a similar question to you.
So I think my journey has been very similar to Shubha's. Firstly, of course, I have to thank my guru for sharing his passion with me. And he was not only a tabla player, but also a music composer. And he ran an institution, music school. So all those things put together, he always said that he wanted me to be a complete musician and not just a tabla player. So, which means that he opened the doors for various things that I could expose myself to. At home, of course, radio was one of the major avenues for exposure to all kinds of music. That was a time when, right from the morning to the night, you had diverse forms of music. In the afternoon, we had Western classical music. In the morning, we had Hindustani music, you had Carnatic music, you had film music, non-film popular music, folk music, all kinds, religious music. So all those things, I think, put together made a great impact on my mind in my formative years. And as a tabla player, you get the chance of course, if you open yourself to that, you get a chance to play with a multitude of people, multitude of forms. So I did just that, and yes, and I gained a lot from all those experiences.
Wonderful. Thank you. So Shubhaji, when you began your career in music, I think times were quite different, both in terms of the socio-political discourse around music and both the ethics and aesthetics of music and musical practice in India. Today, I think music has been mobilized for projects of radical social protest and liberation, and also simultaneously for a dark politics of exclusion. And I wonder, in all of this sort of sea change of music that's happened in the last 3 or 4 decades, what excites you about producing music today? How might music offer up kind of generative possibilities for all of us, beyond just saying, oh, this is tradition or this is heritage? In the context of these major socio-political shifts, and in fact, I think what has really changed is people's perceptions of the uses of music, and the question of what purpose really do Indian traditions of music really serve in these changing times. So if you could talk a little bit about, first of all, what excites you about music, what keeps you going in this, and what do you think we can learn from music beyond, as I said, just saying this is Indian tradition or this is Indian heritage?
Well, I think, I don't know if this is a very cliched or a very simple answer, but it's the music that really keeps me going. Because the more I look, the more I try and learn, there's always more to seek and more to find. And there are also certain areas which I perhaps will never be able to touch, never be able to understand, never be able to actually be exposed to. But the idea of it being a constant companion in my life, a wonderful companion, who will never let you down whatever else happens. I think that is something that is something about music that I truly cherish. And therefore, the more I look at music and the more I hear music, I see how many exciting ways in which it can be used. Of course, my musical vocabulary and grammar comes from Hindustani music. And yet it equips me to go, I mean, when I was growing up in Allahabad, now called Prayagraj, there were no DJs for weddings, So everybody would be called, or every young person who could sing would be called, and the mehndi and the sangeet would consist of all of us belting out wedding songs. And there were wedding songs that were, of course, fun to dance to and everything, but also gave you an insight into life in India. What is the stature of women, for example? Is it something that we want to change or not? Do we sing these lyrics which perhaps could even be termed sometimes misogynistic? Do we sing them as is, or do we treat them as information which we don't try to erase, but we say, okay, I'll move on from here and perhaps sing something else? Sure. There were, I mean, for example, in UP where I grew up, one of the forms of folk music that's really popular, and you hear it very often during Holi, is called Rasiya. Now, most of these Rasiya songs are about Krishna and about Krishna playing Holi, or the interchange of clothes between Radha and identities between Radha and Krishna. Rasiya ko nari banao, let the Rasiya or Krishna become the woman by changing clothes and adornment and jewelry. But these same forms were used in UP to give a message to freedom fighters. Gandhi ke Bhagat Bano Rasiya is also one of the many Rasiya forms that you can find. And this adaptation, this ability to use templates, melodic ideas, literary ideas, musical ideas, to be able to express yourself. I think these are valuable treasures that are there inherent within the music. And you just need to perhaps scratch the surface, and there's lots waiting to be found. And therefore, when I sing, for example, when I sing Dushyant Kumar, a ghazal that he wrote during the emergency, for example, I use my musical vocabulary of raag tal, and I sing it with my lehja or accent of classical music. And I think that's really what excites me a lot, and what makes me go headlong into archives, trawl the net, find books that were published in the 19th century or in some time in 1841, and come up with text that I can sing sitting here today. So I think that's what really keeps me going.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So now, Aneesh, we were talking a couple of days ago about the question of the issue of hierarchies in the practice and pedagogy of music, Indian music, particularly in the context of what we call the classical traditions today. And this is, I think, something that has really come up, in our times, over the last 2 decades in particular, and in the academic world as well. The question of hierarchies and hierarchies of knowledge and all of that really has been a major issue in the academic study of Indian music. So I have a couple of questions that I want to ask that I think coalesce around this theme of hierarchies, since we spoke about it a couple of days ago. So I think one thing is that we're used to hearing 2 aspects of Hindustani music that dominate its representation. The first are the courtly histories, right? And then we have the devotional or transcendent aspects of the music, right? And I think what often gets left out in this kind of a dualistic representation is what I like to think of as the popular lives of raga-based music, right? That permeated the everyday sonic world, even in the 18th century and the 19th century. So we were talking earlier, I think Shubhaji mentioned a couple of days ago when we were in conversation about this text called Mithai Charitra,
yes.
right? In
yes.
which
yes.
It's a 1893 text, which is a collection of songs about mithais or Indian sweets, right? And this is something that I think you've tuned very playfully, and that's really wonderful. And so, music could also be about having fun and reveling in the quotidian, right? Whether songs are about enjoying sweets or traveling on a train, right? And while some of us might dismiss this everydayness of music as frivolous, the truth is that, in a lot of my own work, I've been thinking recently about songs that are about everyday labor, that are about forms of social discrimination, right? That are about socialism, or that are about atheism, right? And these were all expressed through raga-based music in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, especially in South India, and I'm sure that the same is true in the North as well. And so I think I was telling you that in my own work, I've been talking quite a bit about Tamil raga-based music that addresses things like, the exploitation of indentured laborers on tea plantations, specifically Dalit laborers in the Madras presidency, right? And so raga-based music didn't exist simply in the courts and temples, which is the narrative that we're used to hearing, right? But also in the bazaar, in public fairs or melas, in dargahs, in churches, in the courtesans' quarters, on colonial plantations, in factories, and also among Shudra and Dalit musicians whose histories, unfortunately we don't hear a lot about, right? So what do you think would happen if we shifted our focus away from the language of classicism to think really more widely about raga-based music as it lived in the realm of the popular? Would this address perhaps some of the hierarchical framings that we've discussed earlier? And the reason why I ask this is because I really feel that a lot of the work that you've done, as you said, using rag and tal, in some ways echoes this older history, that really moves us out of the inherited paradigms that we've received around the nationalist reinventions of music that happened in the 20th century, and tries to break those open in very generative ways. And so I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that.
Yes, indeed, that if this kind of scholarship was to reach a wider realm, it will certainly open doors for all of us. But we do need to remember that even within the fraternity of musicians and courtesans, within Hindustani music itself, there were hierarchies.
Sure.
And unfortunately, some of them continue to this day. For instance, Drupad singers look down upon khayal singers. Right. Khayal singers, Drupad and khayal look down upon thumri. Okay. All vocalists look down upon dancers.
Right. Excuse me?
Okay. That was in past tense. But the present is equally tense. So
You're getting into troubled waters now.
And then, of course, I have to say this, that vocalists and instrumentalists and dancers, considering accompanying musicians as secondary citizens.
He did it again.
So these hierarchies are to do with the social organization of musicians, as well as the musical forms themselves. Sure. And sometimes the two are conflated. So, you're talking about other than the classical world. But I'm saying within the classical world
Sure.
itself, there are so many of these, this kind of stratification.
Right.
And we need to take that into account when we interact with each other as musicians even today. Sure. But really, the fact that rag music could be used outside those musical forms, Drupad, Khayal, etc. And all, even theater songs, they mention the rag and sometimes the tal as well. There was the first formal music club in Mumbai was called Parsi Gayan Uttajak Mandali. Now that's where Bhatkande, Vishnu Narayan Bhatkande, the eminent scholar, he had his first training there as a member of that organization. And there is a publication of that organization published in 1887. It's in Gujarati. It contains 1100 songs that were performed in the Mandali Jalsas from 1870 to 1886. They are multilingual. They are across the spectrum of forms, even outside Hindustani classical music.
Including God Save the Queen.
God Save the Queen.
Sure.
During the National Anthem project.
Right. And that is probably because of the influence of the Parsi theatre itself.
Yes.
Which was that multi.
And there was Lavani.
Absolutely.
And every possible Garba.
Right.
Everything. So, the past was more open in many ways, I think.
Absolutely.
And we need to acknowledge that. And I think when we study history, we start situating ourselves in a context, Otherwise, we start believing that we are the originators of everything. So long as, of course, history isn't changed.
Right. Well, I guess, so just to follow up on that a little bit, and this might be my last question, I think, before we open it up to a couple of questions from the audience. I do want to think about, what happens essentially if we insert this idea of the popular, this openness, say this book of Parsi theatre songs, if we insert that right smack in the middle of canonical Hindustani music. In my view, the kind of stuff that you've been doing, there's a parallel there. Do you see what I'm saying? That you've really done things with raga-based music that have opened it up in very, very interesting ways. And to me, there's a parallel with that historical openness that you were just talking about. Yes. And so I often think about, if we look at Hindustani music itself as deeply permeated by the idea of the popular, right? That it's not simply a history of elite courtly genealogies. It's not simply the patronage of the Mughal court that defines its history. But if we're really talking about the traditions that we have inherited as people who have inherited, what was really going on in the late 19th century. Well, in the late 19th century, as I said, music lived in all of these different domains and was practiced by a range of communities. It's only later in the 20th century that things kind of get boxed into classical and folk, and then these categories get reified by the state. And those are the categories that we live with, unfortunately, today. But as individual musicians, right, in terms of your individual creativity, I guess this isn't really a question, but it is something I like to think about is what happens if we just push that label of classical aside a little bit, and we think about raga music as popular music, which I truly believe that in the 19th century, if we're talking about a form like the Parsi theatre, or if we're talking about what was going on in Western India with music generally, I would think that it was more popular music than it was what we call today classical, And so, if you have thoughts on that.
Well, I think one way that Shubha and I have thought of is, of course, through our own research and then engagement with all these kinds of this kind of resource material that is available to us. We try to present that on stage whenever there is a possibility. Right. And also we sometimes play the roles of curators. And so one of the projects that we did was the first jalsa we recreated the first jalsa of the Parsi Gayamete Mandali.
But we didn't perform.
We didn't perform.
Other artists to perform that repertoire.
And very established artists. And they were astounded by the variety of compositions that were presented at that time. In the late 19th century.
That's amazing.
So this is one way without having an agenda really, or without being condescending about it with our colleagues. We just open up these doors by involving them in such projects.
And I think also as an artist, when you extend your repertoire to include what you compositions other than those that you got from your guru. Right. And when you present them, I think one has to do so with a sense of conviction and also not be daunted when you don't get approval. I think it's important for a student to keep following those leads that you've talked about. And yes, of course, there will be people who say, oh, this lady, she doesn't know classical music, she only knows. Fine. I mean, if this is what I'm drawn to, then I shouldn't get, too depressed if that happens, Absolutely. I think if this is really a direction that one wants to look in, then you just have to brave it out.
No, that's wonderful.
So yeah. I think that's what we've been doing for a while and enjoying ourselves.
Absolutely. And I think something that what I'm really getting at there also is the fact that this expansion of repertoire, the kind of opening up of genre and opening up of style that I think, as I've said, yes. you've been doing your entire career, really. It addresses the social melancholy around classical music in some ways, simply because it actually gives us a way of thinking about alternate genealogies of music, alternate social histories of music. All of these things live in an embedded kind of way in the compositions and genres themselves. And so, again, I think they're signposts, really, yes. to expanding the historical canvas and therefore, I think, also our social perception of the histories of this kind of music.
One of the compositions presented in the Mandali performances was a hori in Kafi, I think, or Jinjoti, I can't remember, Kafi, I think. And there's no notation, so we have to reconstruct it. In praise of Lord Ripon. So you have a wide variety. So you can look at colonial history also in a different way through the musical lens.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. I feel like I'm taking up a lot of time here. So I think what we'll do is we'll open it up for questions. We have a couple of mics going around. I just want to ask that you please speak into the mic directly when you're asking your question. Questions from the audience? We have the mics ready. Oh, I think the hand over there went up first.
Namaste, Shubhaji and Aneeshji. Thank you for this wonderful session. My name is Namrata. My question is about fusion music. What are your views about fusion music, Western and Indian and classical? What message do you have for fusion music lovers?
I don't have a message because I feel very self-conscious giving messages. But you know that I've already participated in many projects, and I've been an unabashed participant in those projects that are termed fusion. I think those were very challenging, enriching projects for me. As I said, that's not my musical mother tongue. I learn a lot each time I go into those projects, but I see no reason to raise my eyebrows and let them disappear into my hairline about, if somebody does fusion. I think if they're drawn to it, they must try it. And I think there is an audience for it. There are listeners for it. So I really feel that sitting in judgment is not for me. Those projects that I've participated in, I've learned a lot, I've enjoyed. I like listening to projects where collaborations are taking place, and I really feel very thankful for the opportunities that I've had to collaborate with musicians from other systems and forms as well.
And I think it's important, once again, I'm bringing in history here, that it's important to acknowledge that a lot of the forms that form a part of the pantheon of Hindustani or Carnatic classical music actually are syncretic. There's fusion in them as well.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
today we think of them because we tend to confuse tradition with orthodoxy, and that's the problem.
Absolutely.
So if we think of tradition as something that is a living entity that has come to us and needs to go ahead, then we need to acknowledge the fact that these things were happening earlier too.
Yes. There's a lady there, I think.
Namaste,
Namaste.
Sabha and Aneesh. I am Shikandi Rose, and I have a more mystical question for the both of you guys. Because before you began, I felt like very deeply connected to Saraswati, and I wanted to know, in your experiences, what happens when you begin to, one, use your voice as an instrument and then play the instruments? Is it more you're thinking of like the tradition, or you just express something deeper from within you, or is it more like a interconnection where you're like, I have to just get this out, that it's something that I hear, I have to just express, or I have to follow this connection that I feel? Is it a feeling? Is it more technical? Is it more mystical for you guys? And I ask because I'm a student of music. I play the sitar,
Well,
and I just thank you guys. Thank you so much.
thank you. I think the craft is very important. Craft and technique cannot be done away with. And I think the years of training, the years of practice, the years of contemplation are very important. And yet you work towards a moment where you have internalized all that so much that you don't really have to think of, it's almost a intuitive response. And also I must confess to you, because yours is a very deeply philosophical question, that while I'm singing, it is not that I can lose myself each time. And therefore I'm a listener also. And I'm always, very often, I'm aware of the imperfections. And those actually help me get home, tune the Tanpuras again and sit down again to hopefully to improve. And I think that entire, it's a roller coaster ride. You can get, upset on stage. There are exercises that I've done at home for the last 40 years, and sometimes when I sit on stage, I slip. And there are things which I've been trying for 10 years and not been able to do. And then I sit on stage and said, let me try it, and there it goes, zip, it happens. So there is this kind of inexplicable quality to this work. Having said that, the rigor and the discipline, at least I can't do without. But I'm sure everybody has their own way.
The same for me.
Yes?
Thank you again, both of you, for your lovely gift of music. I have a question about where the next generation of Indian classical musicians are being born. Are they in schools? For instance, here we have the Juilliards and Curtises and the other schools. Okay, yeah. And I'm curious as to what the equivalent is back in India. Is it the gharanas still that are getting our next generation of musicians, or are these other forms of schools? And then my next question is, tell us a little bit about your composing journey. Do you do any original composition work as well, both of you?
Yeah, the second piece that Shubha sang, the Dadra, was hers.
Not the text.
Not the text.
The text was
the
from an
melody.
old printed publication called Sangeet Shikha. I think it was published in 1817. And I found this piece and I thought I was drawn to singing it, and I composed it as a dadra.
So yes, we continue to compose. I compose even for tabla. So that journey continues, of course. To answer your first question about music education and what's happening with the younger generation, there are several people, several young girls and boys who are learning music. Many of them want to take it up as a profession. Unfortunately, the arts have not always been a very easy journey, and today in particular for traditional music or traditional dance, it's even more difficult. So we have a lot of youngsters who learn from us and would like to take it up as a profession, but it's a very arduous journey, and I don't know, we don't have any easy formula for...
And there is no school for gifted students as such. And remember that in India, music is so diverse. So for example, if the children of folk musicians who just, I mean, I'm always stunned and amazed by their ability, their talent, their brilliance. And then I hear that they have to go to school and they're not getting enough time to learn repertoire from their hereditary families of musicians. We don't have a school that teaches music to exceptionally talented people. They have to, there are music courses in various universities. There are various schools that have been set up with corporate funding. One of them is in Kolkata called the ITC Sangeet Research Academy, which does very good work. But really a place which looks at exceptionally gifted students and helps them negotiate the world of professional music making as it stands today, even though it's constantly dynamic and changing. I think that we haven't got in India as yet, but I must say that it is an absolute delight. If you come to India and you have some time, we would love you to hear some of the wonderful musicians who are really brilliant musicians. Many of them tour the United States as well. And I mean, I would love to hear them the night long, you know. They're really wonderful. So there's no dearth of talent. There is no dearth. What they need is this reassurance that making this crazy commitment, being crazily obsessed with music, is not going to make them, you know, be on the streets or starving. So that's what really needs to be. I don't know how it can be done, but that's really the reassurance that is required.
And there are also those who want to engage with music, but sadly they may not be very successful performers, possibly because of the dearth of talent. And yet they are very passionate about music. Perhaps we can suggest alternative engagement for them, whether it's to do with events
or scholarship,
or artist management or anything of that sort, or research. So those kinds of things should also be thought of.
So I think we have about a minute left, so we'll take maybe one last question. But the good news is, of course, there's a reception that's going to take place immediately after this, so you'll all have a chance to hopefully interact with Shubha and Aneesh ji.
Namaste Shubha ji, Aneesh ji, or Kedar ji. I have a question, just like, you know, the word guru, you all have, like, you know, and there was a mention that orthodoxy and tradition. So when you invoke your guru while performing or practicing, what way it takes shape in today's world, like, you know, when we hear guru, there are so many gurus and different kinds of, we are in a school of teaching, so we also do this. So how you distinguish between, is it an orthodoxy or a tradition, or what kind of emotion is related to that, especially in terms of your training and, like, you know, the role of guru in your art and, you know, music?
Oh, definitely tradition, not orthodoxy. Because for us, the guru plays a pivotal role. in what is an essentially oral tradition. So the guru is actually interpreting information and knowledge that has been passed down to him or her through generations. Information, scholarship, wisdom. And he or she adds to that and passes that on to us, who are the disciples. It's a tradition which is not unchanging. It is not a frozen entity. It is very much alive, and each of us is contributing to it, so long as we realize and acknowledge that we are not gurus in the wrong sense. Okay, we are mere mortals. We are just messengers, taking something from the past and giving it to the future, and adding something of ours as well in this journey. So it's a tradition, and it's not something that is a ritual for us. When we mention our gurus, it is definitely with intense feeling and emotion, because they have left us with a legacy which we would have never acquired otherwise.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. As a professor who is even less than a mere mortal, just want to say that we saw several types of genius. I think today we saw truly vocal genius and musical genius. We saw compositional genius, and I think we also saw in the Q&A and the discussion with Davesh, both of your pedagogic genius. So thank you for sharing all three of those forms with us. And thank you so much for giving us of your time and your generosity and of your spirit. And thank you all, everybody. Please join me one last time in welcoming them and thanking them.